Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving. It's Anya here with my friend Krish, and today we're going to interview Nico Khan. Nico is part of Safe Space, a nonprofit organization that focuses on mental health.
In this world, there are lots of ways people identify as, one of the very famous ones being part of the LGBTQ plus community. LGBTQ plus stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, questioning, etc. This is a widely known to be sensitive topic where lots of opposition has risen to disrespect them. Furthermore, they are ridiculed by being labeled as different or abnormal, something which should not happen to anyone. In other words, since everyone is a human being, people should be treated equally. We have come here today in honor of Pride Month to bring you a podcast series with interviews, opinions, and elaboration on this certain topic. We want everyone to know that it does not matter what other people think. It is what you think about yourself that most matters. Now, let's go on with the interview. Nico, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Nico Khan. I'm nearly 17 and I'm a sophomore in high school. I identify as a queer trans guy, and I have a unique experience with being LGBT because I have multiple intersecting identities as well as sort of a outside of the norm presentation.
Okay, thank you for introducing yourself. We really appreciate that you're here. Now let's get on with the interview. So the first question is, when and how did you realize that you were queer and transgender?
It was interesting because a lot of people have this phase where they know what being gay or being trans is, but they don't think it's them. And then maybe they have a moment where they're like really homophobic or really transphobic because they just don't want to recognize it in themselves. And I sort of never had that. I basically didn't know what being queer was or LGBT. And then I learned about it and I was like, oh yeah, definitely, that's me. So being trans was like a little more complicated because that's just harder to kind of figure out usually. So with that one, I had a little phase where I was just a really strong advocate, like super ally. And I don't know, I was kind of lying to myself a little bit about it. But overall, it was kind of short, the realization process.
Okay. Very, very interesting. Okay, so on to the next question. Are you comfortable sharing with us about how you came out to your parents about this? And if not, that's totally fine.
Yeah, I was very scared. And I had kind of a lot of reason to be because pretty much my entire childhood, my parents made it quite clear, not necessarily explicitly, but definitely implicitly with just little comments and jokes here and there, that it wouldn't be something they would be okay with. So I was completely terrified, and I didn't for a really long time. I basically figured myself out in like early 7th grade, maybe. And I didn't come out to my parents until October of my freshman year of high school. And I basically let a teacher accidentally do it for me because I was just so scared. So we were doing parent teacher conferences, and my art teacher is very Turkish. I just had a feeling that she was going to mess it up, and I could have reminded her, but I just decided not to. And it didn't really go over well, but it's getting better.
Thank you for sharing. That must have been really hard. Now for the next question. Are you involved in the LGBTQ plus community? If so, how are you involved?
It's hard to say. I mean, I always have been like a really strong advocate for LGBTQ rights, but I also kind of have to be. I guess it's that I kind of have to be because I put myself in a position where I have to explain my identity a lot, or because I kind of present more androgynously, and because in general I confuse people who don't really know what's up with me. So I have to explain it a lot. And I think that makes me sort of accidentally a really big part of the community.
Okay, got it. Thanks for sharing. That's very interesting. In addition, how can one learn more about the LGBTQ plus community to contribute to it?
There's definitely a lot of really useful information on Instagram. I know social media as a whole, especially LGBT creators on YouTube, was huge for me when I was like just coming out, and also when I was just figuring myself out. So mostly just doing your own research and listening to queer voices around you. A lot of times when you're LGBT, you end up becoming the spokesperson for the community, because whoever you're talking to might never have met an LGBT person before. So like as a trans person, for example, if I'm interacting with someone new and they're being really rude to me and I'm rude back, now trans people are rude to them. Like I just established that in their head. So try your best not to make the queer people around you responsible for educating you and making sure you don't like develop hateful opinions.
That is very interesting. What do you think people can do to spread more awareness about the LGBTQ plus community and its importance?
I think a really big part is, you hear this about a lot of like social issues, but I think a really big part is sort of standing up for people when they're not there or when it's hard. So if you're like with your friends and they're doing that thing where they use gay as an insult, or they're saying something that's like kind of insensitive or really insensitive, call them out for it. Because as a cis or straight or both person, I don't know, it's kind of your responsibility to stand up for people who might not be able to stand up for themselves or might not be in that situation with you.
That is very true. That is definitely a strong moral, which I think lots of people should abide by, but not everyone in this world does so. That's one thing which people should learn. The next question is, when did you come to know about the LGBTQ plus community?
It's kind of a funny story, actually. When I was really little, like elementary school age, late elementary school, I kind of knew that that was a thing, but I didn't look into it at all. And I didn't really know what it meant, and my parents never really told me. So it was pretty unknown to me. And then I went to this summer camp and I got really close with this girl. And I was like, I'm feeling feelings. So I did so much Googling, and I happened upon pansexual, which I kind of sort of identify as. And it's funny because that was the first thing I came across, and I was like, so I'm definitely that, but then moving forward. So that's kind of interesting, but basically Google.
Thank you. Now for the next question. Any tips or advice which you would give to someone who just realized they are transgender and or queer?
Yeah, this is a question I'm asked not so infrequently, so I could go on forever, but I guess the main important things that I would say is that it feels really scary, and it feels like, I don't know, you'd rather be anything than this, because it's going to make your life really hard, and like the suicide statistics are insane, and like what if your parents don't accept you, and there's so many things to be anxious about. But the most important piece is remembering that it will get better, and you have to be your authentic self and live your life the way you want, because living your life for others is never going to make you happy. And once you start living your life as yourself and being authentic, the people who vibe with that will come out the woodworks, because there are people that will love you for exactly who you are. And those people are worth waiting for and worth finding.
Definitely, I definitely agree with that. Like they say, time heals all wounds. So definitely things will start to get better for individuals who have to go through that. The next question is, finally, what was your reaction when you found out that there was a Pride Month being created in honor of the LGBTQ plus community? Or not created, but in other words, when you came to find out about it?
I don't fully remember, but I do remember wanting to go so bad, like my entire childhood. It was just the coolest thing to me. And again, I've always been like a really strong advocate. So I was just super into it. And then now that I've kind of grown up and come to understand a lot of the meaning and reasoning behind Pride Month, it's just really important to me. And I'm being a little circular here, but also when I was kind of just coming out to myself, Pride Month was so important, because it's basically seeing, I don't know, what you're so terrified is the case with you be celebrated, and seeing adults who used to be you be okay and alive and happy, which is so important.
Can you explain in your own words what queer and questioning means?
Yeah, so questioning is kind of the easier one, so I'll start with that. That's basically just, if you know something's up, like you're probably not straight, maybe not cis, but you don't know what exactly it is yet, or you're struggling to find a label. So you're just kind of figuring yourself out. And the inclusion of that little piece in the acronym is basically like, if you don't exactly know yet, you still have a place here. And then queer is a tricky one. It's an umbrella term. So I use it because I just like people. I don't know. I guess it's pansexual, but I kind of like queer better because it feels better to me. So a lot of people identify as queer as kind of just not straight. And then it's tricky because it also used to be a slur. So in general, if you're not LGBT, you should avoid saying it unless you're describing someone's identity and they've like told you that's fine. So like, for example, with me, I identify as queer, so you could totally refer to me as queer, but for someone else, it could be kind of touchy. So it's best to just play it by ear and opt for not saying it if you don't know.
Ah, okay. And now on to the last question. I know I had said finally, so I'm sorry about that. Any advice you would give to the people who are currently being bullied or excluded for being part of the LGBTQ plus community?
A lot of it is kind of similar to what I said before, like just it gets better, and being your authentic self is worth it, and there are people that will love you. But specifically if you're like getting bullied for it, like if you're going through a really hard time actively because of that, just first of all, a little funny tidbit. I don't know if it's helpful or not, but a little funny tidbit. They're so upset at you for being LGBT. I don't know, a little bit sus. Every person I've ever met who's wildly homophobic eventually has come out. But also just mean people suck, and they exist everywhere, and you are strong and beautiful and fabulous, and it will end.
Okay, thank you for that. That was very inspiring. That concludes this interview. Thank you again, Nico, for agreeing to be interviewed. We just want everyone to know that we should take pride in who we are. Also, even if you are not part of the LGBTQ plus community, treat others the way you want to be treated. The more awareness there is about this moral, the more peace and harmony there will be in this world. Thank you for listening.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving. a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every weekend, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hoped you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you so much for listening.